now live.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this evening's Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm going to be chairing the committee tonight. My name is Sean Gabriel. I'm standing in for our normal chair, Richard Burton, who's unfortunately not with us tonight. He is with us remotely. He's poorly suffering from COVID, so good wishes to him at home, but he is going to be joining us remotely. So I just hand over to Louise to do our housekeeping tasks, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. Please note that this meeting of the Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Committee is being live streamed and will be recorded by the Council to support the production of minutes and for the use of democratic services. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone present follow the following ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by the Chair. Mute your microphone when you're not talking. If accessing via Teams, always turn on your video function when invited to speak and state your name. Please use your microphone when speaking and please mute or turn off your microphone when you're not talking. If you would like to speak on an item, please do so by utilising the raise your hand feature in the bar at the top of the Teams window, unless you're in the room, and I'll keep an eye out for you. And for those in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, please exit the building by way of the nearest available signed fire exit route and make your way to the assembly point along Gravely Road under the flyover. Finally, please ensure background noise is kept to a minimum and mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Can I just go to apologies?
Apologies have been received from Councillor Rocker, and as already told, Councillors Burton and Haynes are attending remotely, thereby foregoing any voting rights.
Thanks, Louise. We move on to substitute members.
There are no substitute members, Chair.
If we can move now to number 3, declarations of interest. Do any councillors have any disposable pecuniary interests or any local interests on any items of the agenda? Can't see anyone indicate, so we'll move on from there. Minutes of the previous meeting. I think we've all read those, and we've also had a pre-meet, chairs and vice chairs meet. There was no issues picked up, so unless anyone's got any reasons to dispute that, I'm happy to sign those off. Okay, thank you. Any public issues, Louise?
No public issues, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Louise. So we now move on to agenda item number 6, report for Children's Overview, Scrutiny and Care for Experience Young People themed service update. This is one of our recurring items to help us track and change and progress post the Ofsted report. So I can welcome Jane White, Director of Corporate Parroting and Provenance, to present the report. So thanks, Jane. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. So this report is written to give you an update on the progress of the improvement work within the Care Experience Young People's Service and Children's Social Care. It highlights some of the activity that's happened over recent months, and it also contains some information around our Care Levers Hub, our practice week, which explored our practice in a lot of detail, and basic data which will tell us how we're performing. So in terms of the service, there's been some change within the management structure over the Care Experience Young People's teams and some movement in terms of the personal advisors. However, recruitment is ongoing, and we have recently appointed to team managers. We have a service manager in place, and we are currently recruiting a number of personal advisors into the teams. There's been some change around the ways of working because of the introduction of our new hub, and that's had a bit of an impact, but actually it's really positive in terms of young people. So in July 22, the Care Experience Young People were subject to our dedicated practice week, which was the first practice week within BCP for a long time in this way. And what we explored was young people's voice in their pathway plans. So that's a plan of work that gives us an overview of how we're going to be helping young people move into independence. The quality and access to accommodation for young people, quality of visits and the frequency of visits, supervision, team managers' supervision with social workers and personal advisors, and it offered a critical friend There was lots of activities during that week. There were observations, there were practice learning reviews, so auditing work. There were lunchtime learning sessions for people, and there was feedback from young people in relation to our Care Leavers Hub and the work with our personal advisors. And the Appendix 1 of the report gives you some detail around the practice week and the main highlights, which found some real areas of strength with our personal advisor relationships with young people. What we need to do is get better in terms of consistency. So there's an inconsistency of quality and an inconsistency across the board in terms of the accommodation that young people are offered. So that's work in progress. It offered good evidence of the voice of the child, so we're listening to young people, we're trying to involve them in their planning. Again, consistency is something we need to be focusing on. So there was a lot of learning during that week, and that learning is being put into our service improvement plans going forward. Supervision, it needs to be actively noting what the young person's view is in their planning, and that's an area of practice that we are really trying to focus on at the moment. Health passports was raised in our previous Ofsted inspection. It's positive to report that our health colleagues have been working really positively with the service and with our participation team. And what we know is that young people are getting their health passports. The issue has been around helping them to understand what they really are and the presentation of them for young people so they're meaningful. And that's a piece of work that health are doing with our participation team at the moment. But what we know is a high proportion of young people are getting those health passports, which is really positive. You'll have heard of the Care Leavers Hub, I'm sure, and ongoing conversations about the hub. So Appendix 2 of the report refers to the hub, which opened on the 4th of August this year. It was open just with young people, and there is going to be an opening in October in the Care Leavers Week for professionals as well and members. Our young people got really involved in the development of that hub. Working alongside the developers, designing, picking out where they wanted things, what they wanted. There was a steering group involved. They're reporting that they felt listened to, and that they've been really involved. And the hub is now open and offering group work. It's offering one-to-one sessions. It's offering a range of advice and support for young people and guidance to help them along. And our real challenge now is because the hub is central to Bournemouth, it's about making sure that the services that we're offering and that young people can access through the hub are also accessible to all. For those young people who can't actually come to the hub, or those young people who are placed out of the area for whatever reason, we now need to reach out to them and make sure that they're getting a similar service. The offer, the Care Leavers offer, has been approved at Corporate Parenting Committee. Again, young people fed back that they felt really involved in the development of the offer. We're in our last we're waiting for the comms team to help us to put the photographs together within the offer, so it's ready and to go. But young people actually fed back that they wanted to be part of the photographs within the offer itself. So we're just doing some last minute adaptations to that. In terms of housing, I've already mentioned there's an inconsistency, but we're trying really hard to improve working with our housing colleagues. And we now have a homelessness board, which I co-chair with the housing director. And there's a real focus within that. There's a work stream which is specifically around how we meet the needs of care leavers, and that's an ongoing piece of work with a number of different tasks linked to it, including developing the terms of reference, which we are at now, delivering additional homes for young people, another 20 new homes, finalising the housing protocol, and making sure that we've got the right agreement about the quality of housing, working alongside our housing colleagues and young people to agree what that should look like. And the floating support needs of our care experienced young people. So that piece of work is ongoing. And there are a number of things in train at the moment, and what we want to do is to make sure our housing offer for young people is consistent and of a good quality. We've just recently been offered some funding from the Department of Education, and that funding is securing us 2 posts, one being a senior housing practitioner and one being a homelessness prevention worker. We're in the process of recruiting them, and they are there specifically for care leavers, and they're going to be helping us move forward the standards of housing for children and young people in the area. All the young people who were temporarily placed in HMOs at the point of Ofsted inspection have moved on. One young person is currently temporarily accommodated in a shared living facility at the point of writing this report, and we have a wraparound support available for those young people. So there's lots of project work going on outside where our fostering and supported lodgings team are supporting young people to feel that they've got someone to turn to when they're in that position. It's been appropriately managed and overseen by myself. So the first acquisitions for care experienced young people are now tenanted, with a pipeline of additional homes scheduled to be ready for occupation over the coming months. So ongoing growth in terms of our sufficiency of housing for young people. There's a range of options for them: social housing, permanent housing allocation, supported housing accommodation, private rented accommodation. And as I've mentioned before, we have specific work which is to focus a wraparound approach to our young people who need that additionality when they're moving into independence. We have a scheme called Always There, where we have carers who offer to support and link up with young people. So demand is always an issue in terms of housing, but we are working, like I say, with our colleagues to make that more available for young people. There were some concerns recently around the 17 to 18-year-old care leavers in suitable accommodation, which fell slightly in June. So we're really focusing on trying to ensure that that improves, and it has improved in the last month's data, but it's work in progress ongoing. There were also some concerns in relation to the in touch, where we have to keep in touch with some young people, and the data wasn't positive in recent months. However, what I can report is the August data is much, much better. And last month we were in touch with 94% of our 17 to 18-year-olds, which is a huge improvement and down to a lot of work across the teams and across our education colleagues as well, and data teams to get that right. Equally, the number of young people in education, training and employment we were concerned about at the time of writing this report. However, that has also improved significantly. In fact, we are reporting 72.6% of young people who are currently in education, training, employment, which is really positive for the local authority and over what a good local authority looks like in terms of EAT figures. So there is work in progress ongoing. However, we are embedding the learning from our practice week. We're trying to find solutions where there've been issues raised, and we can see that in the data. In terms of in touch, employment, education, training, we're not going to stop there. We're going to keep working on it. We need to continue to work on that and continue to really focus on making sure that every young person is in touch with us wherever possible, and that we offer them opportunities in terms of education, training, employment wherever possible. Close working with housing going forward, as I said already. We're targeting our rising 18 young people 17 and a half plus, to try and ensure that we've got a really clear plan in place for them for their housing needs. I've mentioned the recruitment of the additional housing workers, which will really help us to move that forward. And as I say, the monitoring of the hub activity is really key now, because whilst we've got a lovely hub in place that young people think is great, we need to make sure we're reaching out to all of our young people. And in addition, next steps are around disseminating the offer to young people so everybody's clear about what's on offer for them. So you can see in the appendices that the detail of the practice week and what we found during the practice week. And you can also see some comments from young people in relation to the development of the pub, and some pictures of what it's looking like for them. And they are all saying, those who are using it are saying it's really positive piece of work. Some quotes in there about it being potentially the best care leavers hub in the world. I'm going to be here every day. We're proud of this space. And you can see also there was quite a lot of upcycling going on, so that we were using bits from other areas, that so we weren't spending more than we should on the actual hub. But it looks great, and they are really starting to enjoy it, and we'll be monitoring it going forward. That's a tour through the report. Is there any questions or anything that you'd like me to elaborate on?
Thanks, Jane. That's really interesting. So thanks very much for the report. I think I'll speak for everybody. The work on the hub looks amazing. Some of the pictures and the feedback you got from the young people, it's great. And obviously we're probably all very much looking forward to visiting it ourselves at some point. I think you touched on the report. For getting young people from Poole and Christchurch and further afield there, would we suggest we'd be supporting transport means to get some of our young people there from outside areas?
Yeah, we're looking at trying to develop a number of options really for them. So obviously virtual access, but also what we need to do is to make sure that they all have a fair crack at what's on offer across the board. So we'll be talking to young people about how best we can reach out to them if they're not using the hub. Well, it won't be appropriate for them. Some young people can't come into the centre of Bournemouth for various reasons. So we need to be ensuring that they get the advice, the assistance, the support that that they're getting in the hub in a virtual way, through our duty services, through our personal advisors, making sure they've got the right information and guidance about what they're entitled to. And that's what I'm asking the teams to really focus on now.
Okay, thanks for that, Jane. Just before I go out to the committee, you mentioned health passports. Could you give me a bit more detail what's all included in those things?
Yeah, so it's basically a history of a young person's health. So when they have their last looked after child medical health check, I should say, it's when they're 18, just before they're 18. What our health colleagues do is they summarise for the young person all of their health history, so that they can walk away and they know what's happened to them. And when Ofsted came in, there was some question over whether young people really understood that they had, well, they didn't even really know what a health passport was when it was mentioned to them. And I think a lot of it was about the fact that it hadn't been communicated effectively, but actually they were getting them. We know now that, at the time they were getting them, but it wasn't being presented in a way that a young person friendly way. So it's a bit like having an immunisation record, for example. It's about having your history, so that because you might not have your parent there to tell you or to remind you what happened, so they can keep that, and we keep a record as well for them going forward.
Thanks, Jane. I think Sarah's got a question. So Sarah?
It's Zara, and regarding the Youth Homelessness Board, now you may have already answered this, but it wasn't 100% clear to me. What is the age range around that?
For the Youth Homelessness Board, so the housing aspect of it is 18 plus, but obviously we start planning for young people and their housing at an earlier stage. So personal advisors become involved with young people from the age of 16, and they start moving forward in terms of planning for them. Definitely at the age of 17 and a half. So we work really closely together. So we work in partnership with our housing colleagues to ensure that if it's the right time for them at the age of 18, they've got an appropriate option in terms of housing. But that can include a range of things. And sometimes young people aren't ready to move on, and we think that through as well. So that there is options for young people to remain where they are for a longer period of time, if that's the right plan for them. I don't know if I've answered your question. Is that?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thanks. Sorry, Lisa, I think you had a question?
Hi, I just wanted to understand more about how the gold band priority aspect works with young people who are going into their first independent housing. So if they get a council property, then that means they've got a permanent home ongoing. Whereas if they go into a sort of say if they go into a private landlord's accommodation, or if they go into a temporary housing accommodation, that means that in a year or 6 months they could end up in a difficult situation where they find it hard to find further accommodation because they haven't got family and stuff that people usually have. So are they then still able to get that gold banding, say if in 3 or 4 years time, or does it have to be as care leavers that they are able to get that?
So we can support care leavers for longer than beyond their 18th birthday. It's basically the guidance is up to the age of 25 in terms of how we support young people, and situations change for them in terms of their housing at times. I think they're entitled to bid on properties when they have a gold priority. In terms of if things change in terms of the private rent, if they're in a private rent, then we would be working with our housing colleagues to support them to find something else to ensure that they've got some security.
Okay, so would they still have that gold band priority?
So care leavers are gold band by the nature of them being a care leaver. They take a priority. So yes. Okay,
so it's still applicable till they're 25.
If they are seeking accommodation and they're a care leaver, if they've not got accommodation, they're a care leaver, they would get gold band priority.
Okay, for life.
I can't answer that, to be honest. I don't think so. I think it's just up until the age of 25 we support them.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. That's an interesting question to ask. So I think we've got Susan next, I believe, and then Sandra.
Sorry, I can't hear.
Susan, got your mic on. Sorry.
Right, is that better? Thank you very much. Very interesting and different approach to things. So it's very heartening that things have moved on. But what I wanted to ask, you said you're reaching out to the 17.5 plus. How is the reverse, that if they need you out of hours, what is in place for them currently, the young people, to be in touch to the town hall, and is there a port of call for them even out of hours? That's question one.
So in terms of so the hub is available in flexible hours at the moment. It opens on a Saturday, it opens some evenings, so there's a bit of flexibility there. But we do also have, if a young person needs somebody, that we do also have a out of hours service, which is available for all of our children and young people if they really need it as an emergency. And also, as I said, we have some schemes where there is a wraparound support, which for example, we might have a foster carer or a supported lodgings carer who's been selected to support a young person who's just moved into an accommodation, and they're available outside of office hours, and that's agreed on a plan with each individual young person who needs it.
A few years back, there was a problem actually with the phone number not actually reaching all foster children and children of the age you're talking, and it's the wrong word, sorry, growing into adult life. Are all the social workers and everybody working with these independent people passing on all the information that they need? Is there a Bible for them? Sorry, I use that word, but you know, where everything is written down and it's accessible. Is that ongoing?
Yeah, so we have our offer that's now been agreed. So that written down guidance as to what they might be entitled to, but they also we're we have a suite of documents that need to be updated in terms of information for care leavers. So we're working on some of that now. But yes, I mean, they should have access to who they can contact at any time moving forward.
Could I have more assurance when you say should have? Is there any way we can get a little bit more assurance that it is happening?
Yeah, so that information is given to them by their personal advisors.
Okay, so thank you very much for the answer to that one. The other question I have is you talk about aspiration of work opportunity. Are foster children, when they reach the age, invited and encouraged to go to university? And is the support that we once placed, I reckon it was about 4 or 5 years, Councillor Coop, you probably remember the amount of £20,000 to go towards providing education at uni. Is that still in place and being ring fenced? And do we know of any of the children, well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't use children, the young adults going to university and
So
being encouraged?
So we do have young people in university, and we do work with our virtual school really closely to support young people who are we want to be going into university. Obviously, we'd support as many as we possibly could to do that. There is a bursary for young people who have been in care to help them when they're in university, and we also help them wherever possible with their accommodation, etc. I don't know whether Sarah has any further information around higher education and options, but they do have rights to support.
Thank you, that's answered my questions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jane. I'll bring Councillor Moore in, then I've got Councillor Burton online.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I haven't actually got a question, more comments, because I am, of course, a member of the Corporate Parenting Board. And I can say we've had regular meetings to keep us updated about progress. And we also enjoy active participation from children in care and care experienced young people, because the board is actually co-chaired by a young person. And when I say active participation, I mean just that. They don't actually leave any stone unturned, as you would expect. But the 2 things I would like to comment on. One is the new Care Leaders Hub 333, and I think that is really good news. And I do look forward to visiting shortly. And the second is something I very much support, and that's the youth homelessness. Sorry, I can't say it either. The Youth Homelessness Board and funding for a homelessness prevention worker, because obviously the demand for suitable housing for young people leaving care in this area is high, and it's clearly very difficult to meet. And I appreciate that this is work in progress, but there is still a huge amount of work to be done to prevent homelessness and housing difficulties. This is a really, really tricky area. As I say, I know it's work in progress, but I know that you've got to keep onto it in order to help. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And just to confirm, it is high on our list of priorities, housing and working with our housing colleagues.
Yeah, yes, thank you for that.
Thanks, folks. So I can bring Councillor Burton in from online.
Thank you very much, Chair. And well, firstly, I'm corporate parenting, and the Care Leaders Hub is very exciting, and I know that the young people there are very excited by that. I was going to test you all if I was actually there to ask you if you knew what 333 stood for. Maybe I'll wait till the next meeting. So that's sort of a little bit of homework for you. My question was. First of all, management and staffing. It has anticipated that the management structure will very soon be all permanent. This report was obviously written a little while ago.
Yeah.
Has there been any change on that?
No, we were expecting starters soon. It's just been the notice periods have meant that they haven't actually started yet. So it's all anticipated to be moving forward quite soon.
Great, thank you.
I think the first one comes in October.
The other question about the voice of the child, I know that's something that's coming up quite a lot, and we're seeing quite a lot of evidence of this in the papers, in quotes from children, which is very nice to see. But one thing that I need to ask is, are we hearing the voice of all children, even the voices of those who we may find more difficult to hear? I'm just sort of slightly worried that there may be some cherry picking of the voices, and how can we assure that we're hearing all children?
Okay, well, that's a really good question, because obviously we want to hear the voice of every child, and what we want to see when we're looking at young people's files is, and when we're looking at their plans, is that they're informed by the voice of the young person. What we know as well is that more recently we have young people who haven't engaged with talking to us in any depth have recently engaged through the hub. Which is really positive. But that's an area of work that we want to really focus on. That's what we're trying to ensure is evident when every time we look at auditing case files, when we look at talking to young people. I was out talking to young people this time last week actually about our care leavers sufficiency and looking at how are we getting it right in terms of our corporate parenting strategy. And I had a huge amount of feedback around the renewing of the corporate parenting strategy. I think the issue has to be that each individual PA, personal advisor, and everyone that's working with these young people needs to make it evident that they are seeking the views of young people, and it's not easy to demonstrate sometimes. And I think often when we talk to young people, they talk about a good relationship with their workers, that they feel like they're being listened to, but actually it's not evident in the case file, and that's what we're trying to move forward. But you're absolutely right, we've got groups, but they're not the voice of everybody. We've got newsletters going out, we seek views of young people, but not every young person gives us feedback. But that's where we need to really push to make sure we're doing it.
Thank you very much for that answer. So, Chair, can I have one more question? That's
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah. The other one was about rough sleeping of care and homelessness for care experienced young people. Do you have any numbers that involved here? And are numbers sort of the same, or are they going up or down?
In terms of homelessness?
Yeah.
Okay, so currently we have a couple of young people who are out of the area, who are 23, I believe, who have been offered placements in the local area, who are choosing not to come back to the local area. They want to live elsewhere. So we're trying to support them to find further accommodation. That can be quite tricky, but we're working with them, and we're making sure that they've got a roof over the head in that period of time. I'm not aware of any other homeless situations, because we can offer young people homes. It's a matter of them. Sometimes they make choices not to be local. We have one young person currently being supported in a bed and breakfast at the moment, and that's for a number of reasons, but they're top of the list to find accommodation, and they have the wraparound support that I've been describing today. So, and they are an older young person.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Shane. Is that okay, Richard?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Chair.
Right. You wanted to come in, didn't you? Okay.
If a young person had like a disability, whether that was physical or psychological, which prevents them from like having a full-time job, and they were in care like previously, is the age range for housing still the same?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you very well. I think you were saying if they've got emotional issues and they need housing. Sorry, could you repeat it? I didn't quite catch what you said. It's a microphone issue, I think.
If a young person had a disability, whether it was like physical or psychological, which prevents them from having a full-time job, and they were previously in care, is the age range for housing still the same?
Yes. So the support in terms of whether they have an adult need, a need that meets the criteria of adult social care, but for children it's up to the age of 25 and young people. But if they have significant needs that meet the needs of adult social care, then they would be supported through adult social care as well.
Okay, thank you.
Susan?
Social workers that are attached to a person, is continuity ongoing? Because again, historically, the young people were actually saying that they got used to somebody, they bonded with somebody, and then unfortunately that person left to go to another town hall, different job. Is the hub helping? Is the continuity going to improve, do you feel? And is it already improving?
So what the hub can provide is a central place where they know where they can go to seek advice and support, which is a real positive. And like I said earlier, we need to reach out to young people who can't access the hub. What we know so far, and it's too early days to really tell in terms of the impact, but what I'm hearing is that we are engaging, like I said, some young people through the hub that wouldn't ordinarily be talking to us, which is a real positive. We are trying to, if there does have to be a change of worker in any way, we are trying to ensure that that process is dealt with appropriately and in a child-friendly, young person-friendly way. There is some turnover, but that's something that's happening across the country, really. That it's quite difficult sometimes to retain. But we're trying to make sure that if a worker has to change, that there's a proper handover. And I don't think we've always got that right, but we're trying really hard to make that happen going forward.
Very important, but thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Has anyone else got any further questions? I think just one last one for me, Jane. I was just looking at the report, and I think one of the sections, it covers personal supervision to explore the complex work with young people who have experienced trauma. Would you be able to talk me through what that is? Because I've noticed it's a key strength, but also noticed of an area for further development.
Sorry, could you point me to the...
Yeah,
so personal supervision.
Practice team summary.
Okay, so personal supervision. So what we know is working with children and young people in social care is that workers need to have time to reflect on how they're whether they're making an impact, and if things aren't going the right direction, how we can change the way to work with young people. So it's really important for our social workers, personal advisors, family support practitioners to have a one-to-one supervision or group supervision with their managers, and that's the bit that we need to be making sure going forward that we are consistent across the teams to help our workers to feel supported in working with some real complex situations at time, but also just to revisit, are we making a difference? If we're making a difference, what else can we do to improve the circumstances for the young person? And if it's not making a difference, let's reflect on what else we can do differently. So it's important that workers have that.
Thanks, James. Thank you for answering that. I think Councillor Butt would like to come in, if that's okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask in regards to what percentage of children have we engaged thus far? We know that we can never engage with every child, but what percentage are we aiming for? What data will we capture to ensure that our school children support workers are asking the right questions of our children, so they are not being obtrusive, as many youngsters will not always want to be engaged fully?
Okay, so engaged as in back and the child's voice, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, just a thing that I just thought of earlier is regards of information, so contact numbers, email addresses, etc. Children nowadays have a smartphone. We all have a smartphone. An app would be ideal in this situation, which would have all the relevant information for the child to use. We're using data all the time, so that would be an ideal situation. But it's just having that data there to see what is happening, because we don't have great visibility of that. So seeing who's been engaged, what's been engaged, and then using that to then help us.
And I don't think we have that data that you're asking about, because we don't have a app as such, but we do have newsletters that go out to young people, and we also send information out to carers, so we try and engage them through, and so they've got information and advice through carers. I don't think I can give you an exact percentage, if I'm honest, about how many, or but it is something that's high on our priority list, because we want to be hearing from young people. And one thing that we did do when we were doing the offer, for example, for young people, was we didn't just go to the groups that are out there, the Unite and Insight groups that are out there for young people, but we also asked PAs to go out to talk to young people about their views about the draft that we had in place. We had quite a lot of feedback from them, and the offer in itself was developed based on not only what we needed to put in there, but also what young people were telling us. And we're trying to do that more and more. So the care leaver strategy is another one that I'm trying to seek views, a wide range of views about what that should look like. Have we got our priorities right? What else do you think we should be doing, and how do you think we should be doing it? But it's all work in progress, and I don't think we can always engage everybody, but we can do everything possible to try.
Just to come back, I'd like to see that data in the future, if possible, on a report to come to the committee, so we can have visibility of that. Obviously, I appreciate that it's very difficult, but I'd like to see it in the future. And
the other thing I can tell you is that I think the last month's engagement, so young people, children who had been involved, participated in their child and care reviews, for example, was very high. So they were giving views around their care planning. I think it was 100% last month, and that will go up and down, of course, depending on the young people. But we are trying through the looked after children care reviews to make sure that we hear the young person's voice.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor. Lisa.
I just had a question about visits from social workers and PAs for young people that are leaving care, or maybe even still in care. And I just wondered, how much does the computer system flag up, say, if somebody's not been seen and it goes beyond a certain time, and perhaps their PA has changed, or so?
Yeah.
Can they fall in between the gaps, or does the computer system have some way that it flags if somebody hasn't been seen for, say, 3 months or something? Would that automatically come up?
So we have data reports that we can dip into on a daily basis, that managers can access on a daily basis. We also have monthly reports that tell us visiting patterns for children and young people. So it will flag to the manager if there is an issue. I think that it's safe to say that ordinarily we would know if young people haven't been seen. We need to be watching the data and keeping an eye on it, talking to PAs and social workers in supervision about when the child was last seen. That's usually recorded in the supervision note. So there's a lots of checks and balances to ensure that children and young people are seen. And what we also know is that, sometimes it's the data is only as good as what you input into it. So we've been doing a lot of work with our PAs, for example, throughout the last few weeks around the inputting of keeping in touch data, and data around suitable accommodation, and making sure that they're recording it in the right place. And we also know that holidays can impact in terms of recording. We're trying really hard to ensure that young people, their visits are recorded in a timely way, and that's the consistency that we need across the service.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jane. I think we've covered up all questions, unless anyone else has got anything else. I think we're done.
Kelsey just asked to join the meeting and track it.
Yeah, I'm not sure who's got the ability to do that. So.
No, I haven't.
Does he want to chat? Does he want to just message you the question, and you can go from there? Sorry, Jane. You just hold on. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
Okay, I think we'll move on there. I think we can always send our Councillor Kelsey can send his question in.
Okay, thank you.
It's okay. I can forward that on. Okay, so thanks very much for that. It's a really good report. It's really good to see the report yourself and the hard work that all the team are doing, for our young people in BCP. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Right, so we can move on to the next agenda point, which is number 7, which is the SEND improvement journey. So this is another one of our recurring items to help us track and change and progress the different, following the Ofsted visit. Tanya Smith, the head of Service School Place Planning and Capital, is to present this report. So over to you, Tanya. So thank you.
Thanks very much. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, this is the update on the progress that we've made. Expand places for specialist places for children with EHCPs. Obviously forms a major part of the work that we're doing as part of our SEND improvement journey, and helps us to tackle the high needs deficit. We understand it to be a real high priority area of work, and we're trying to harness the resources necessary to bring some further pace to this work. And whilst that work in the background is ongoing to bring together a robust team with all the expertise that we need, we are benefiting from support internally from colleagues across the council. And today is an update on that work. Just to say that this project started life by sending to all schools across BCP an invitation to express an interest in opening specialist places co-located with their site, or expanding their existing, say, specialist school provision. That then meant that we received 34 expressions from a total of 16 trusts across BCP. And in total, those 34 expressions have got the potential to deliver between 300 and 500 places. So a really good start, a really promising response from our local school partners, which really emphasises the level of support and their willingness to engage in this process, and of course joint commitment to our priorities. What we've done is we've looked at all of those expressions and tried to make some sense of them. First of all, putting them through our evaluation criteria, and the evaluation criteria briefly sort of set out that we wanted to target the increase of specialist places to children with ASC, speech language communication needs, and social, emotional and mental health needs. We also set out in that criteria that schools would need to demonstrate that they have the level of expertise necessary to deliver what they're putting forward as in their proposal, and a whole range of other criteria that really tells us as a service that they've got the capacity to deliver what they're proposing, that they've thought about the curriculum, the leadership and management is sound, their Ofsted judgments support what they're proposing to do, and of course that it's sustainable. So a whole range of criteria really, which is sort of part of our bread and butter in an education service for making sure that schools are sustainable and the things that they're planning to do are fit for purpose and can be delivered. So once we sort of run through all of those schemes through that sort of fairly high level exercise, what we came up with is the table just under paragraph 8, which sets out the status of scheme proposals, and it says that we think 21 of those 34 proposals are worth looking at and running with in more detail, and together they would provide up to just under 400 places. we're sort of setting them out in this report as tranches, because I think it's helpful to think of them as being delivered in tranches that are aligned to academic year in which they're delivered. So, for instance, tranche 1 comprises 4 schemes for delivery in 22-23, which obviously we're in a new year. They have been delivered, and then tranche 2 follows up quickly on the heels of that for delivery in 23-24, and we've got some ranges as well. So in tranche 2 I'm saying 23-24, but there's also possibility that those schemes could be delivered for 24-25, just so that you're aware that there's a number of schemes, and depending on a whole range of factors, and not least the fact that schools are constrained to do building works in holiday periods, that those timescales might need to shift a bit. So that's just a rough idea, really. Tranche 3 you can see is 24, 25 and 25-26, and then tranche 4 is some 12 schemes that we really haven't got to in any great detail at this stage, but that could find their way into these earlier tranches as soon as we're sort of making progress, and we've already made some progress with a tranche 4 scheme today. So a bit of a moving feast, really, this table, but what we can be sure of is tranche 1 is obviously delivered. Tranche 2 is what we're working towards now for those academic years, and in the meantime we'll be advancing tranche 3 and 4, because obviously work that we do now means that they can be brought forward and delivered, and that prep work is critical then to the pace at which we move. In paragraph 9, and I won't go through the report in all of this level of detail, but in paragraph 9 we set out details of schemes where they may benefit from a different approach. I've said that 3 schemes could form part of what we're calling a graduated support approach. Now, it might be that we want to sort of change that up because it doesn't sound necessarily catchy, but these are schemes that potentially are creative and innovative and help our mainstream schools really make some progress with developing good inclusive practice in their schools, and could include mainstream plus examples. We're not supposing that the 10 million would be used for that purpose. It could be that the further capital that the council and all councils were allocated as part of the SEND grant could be used for a small amount on a sort of a match fund basis. But these are the sorts of ideas that we're formulating behind the scenes. 8 schemes don't meet the criteria. I'm saying at this time, and I'm sort of hesitate to sort of name those schemes, because we want to keep the door open with all of the people that submitted expressions so that we can negotiate. You didn't quite hit the mark this time, but there could be a later tranche. There could be a tranche 5, could even be that you'd find yourself in tranche 4 if we've just got some time to talk through your aspirations, your delivery model, and see if there's some agreement that we can be made about a different and alternative approach or model. So those 8 schemes don't meet the criteria at this time, and I think that's the key wording there. Just picking up on the last bullet point under paragraph 9, says that specialist places at Winchelsea Special School and Somerford are very much still in the making. We've got 2 major projects there. Each of them deserve a separate report in their own right, and we are working on those schemes now, working with our construction partner to develop what we hope will form a master plan to put in front of members. The added complication with both of those schemes is that we submitted nominations for the Department for Education School Rebuilding Programme, which could mean, helpfully, I'd say, that we'd maximise investment in the council, wouldn't need to use our own money, but we'll wait and see. The first list has been released on those, and the first list didn't include Winchelsea and Somerford, but what we know is the DFE have instructed a team of surveyors, and those surveyors have been visiting those schools. So they did say that whilst you might not be on the first release of the list, you could be on the second release. So we are still hopeful, although we're disappointed not to see ourselves, and we sort of quickly jumped to conclusion, but it's not over until it's over. So we do remain hopeful for at least one of those bids, but who knows, you know, don't want to raise your expectations, but it is an important part of the timing now of both of those reports to come later, which we're sort of saying autumn, winter, but really needs to coincide with the with those announcements for the DFE about the success or not of those nominations. So just getting back to the report there, I've included some reference in the report to project delivery and management, just because, of course, we're picking up on lots of learnings from previous schemes and how to do business and do things right and mitigate risk for the council. So that's in there really for reassurance. It is a work in progress. Wouldn't want to pretend everything's perfect, but we're certainly getting there, and that transformation is taking place, and we're really pleased with some of the things that we're seeing and developing and embedding. There is something reference in the report to a business case and the process of ensuring that these schemes stack up, and the efficacy and the funding opportunity for cost savings or cost avoidance is obviously key to that. Tranche 1 schemes are laid out in some detail, in a table under paragraph 13, and just give you an idea of the schemes that we've provided or delivered, for this academic year. Both temporary options for the Broadstone First and Middle, Throop Learning Centre supported internships, which opens in October, and then Linwood School, which is an expansion. And then a bit of detail follows under that table about each of those schemes, which no doubt you've had a chance to sort of read and learn a bit about. I just wanted to say something about Tranche 2 schemes. We're working on those. They're at the concept stage. The moment the cost implications are very high level. Hopefully we hope hopefully we'll make some progress on those, and they will be deliverable for the timescales we set out for Tranche 2. I've got every faith we're working with some really good performing and collaborative trusts to make progress on those schemes. Tranche 3 schemes include 2 major schemes, and this could take up quite a significant chunk of the funding. And then Tranche 4, we probably wouldn't be able to afford all of those, so it would be about cherry picking those that offer the best value for money. Last thing I wanted to pick up on before pausing for questions or reflection is the options, really, because of course they mention the council's work to commission new specialist provision as part of the government's free school programme, and these are 2 bids that we're in the process of preparing for a deadline of the 21st of October. 2 specialist schools, potentially on 2 sites, it's a high level, it's an intensive piece of work to meet that deadline. First of all, I should say that, and I'm confident that the various teams will rally round and get those bids submitted. Of course, it's entirely up for the DFE then to decide, whether the proposals have legs. And then we're into the detail of whether the site options put forward by the council are really workable. And again, working with our construction partner, we've just tried to assess the extent to which those sites are large enough and could accommodate new specialist provision. So lots for us to sort of chew over. And if at least one of those comes off, we would be in a really good position, I think. There's lots of things in the report from there on around the financial implications, lots of reference there to how we're doing business with our Academy Trust in terms of funding agreements, value for money, how we're assessing the various implications, including the requirement for consultation and school organisation change, working with the Regional Schools Commissioner. I included that in the report just so that you felt we've got this covered. You know, we're all over all of these aspects that actually, if you forget and fall by the wayside, can mean that at the last minute your scheme comes a cropper. So hopefully that gives you some idea of the scale of work involved as well in bringing forward these proposals. As I say, it's not a perfect programme at the minute, but we are working really hard to make sure that we close gaps and that we deliver something which will have impact to our high needs deficit. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Tanya. That was a very detailed report, and it's great to see how much work is going on within the council to provide all these spaces for our children. Just to confirm, just for me, for the Department of Education projects, the potential ones for Winchelsea and Suffolk, are they actually complete rebuilds or extensions?
Yeah, it's an interesting programme. They could be complete rebuilds, or they could be remodelling that focuses on one or two blocks or areas of the school. My sense is that it would be the latter. But you never know, do you? These things sometimes work in mysterious ways. So
everyone's fingers crossed. Obviously, there's a lot of need for space. Is the driver for the extra need for spaces, is that because of population growth? I just noticed that the average in BCP with the amount of children on ECHP plans are higher than the national average. Is that why? Is it population? Do we know why that is?
Yeah, and I'm sure other colleagues can join in on this one, but my sense is that it's an increased incidence of SEND through children coming through with more complex needs. It's also to do with population changes, but not least, you know, many authorities were caught out in a similar way where they were planning mainstream places, but really they're at 10 places in the same way, sort of lagged behind. And what you find then is a chasing your tail every academic year, really struggling then to provide sufficient places. So what I'm thinking is that with the bids for the new specialist school, we can not get ahead of the game, but we certainly can go some way to catching up. And I don't know if it's helpful to think in terms of catching up or activity that we've not quite done. I think it's just typical really of where local authorities have come from in terms of their provision for SEND and their planning, and also the capital funding. You know, let's not forget the DfE have only recently allocated a regular capital fund to support the expansion of specialist places. So I'm really pleased to see that momentum, and I think that single source of the truth for us will really help us to understand exactly what accounts for this growth. I don't know whether I've done that justice, and invite any colleagues to sort of join in with their history knowledge of BCP.
It'd be interesting to know why it's grown so much. I mean, I think it's a fascinating subject.
Can I come in, Chair, if that's
yeah, of course.
all right? Yeah, so I think Tanya's covered it, but since the 2014 reforms, where statements went to education healthcare plans, all local authorities have seen a growth in education healthcare plans, and then that, of course, has led to more children being agreed for specialist places, and so this is quite a common situation in local authorities, that they don't have enough specialist places.
Okay, thank you for that. That's interesting. I think I had Councillor Moore wanted to come in first. Is that? Oh, Richard, if you can come in first.
Thank you, Joe. Actually, I'm just following on from exactly what you was just talking about, because looking at the increase in number of places required for pupil students with SEND, and we are, it seems, actually creating a lot more places, which is really good to see. In my mind, I've got a graph in my mind. The increase in number of children that we need to find places for, and the increase of places. Now, in my mind at the moment, the number of children line is higher than the number of places line. Can we sort of look into crystal ball and decide when those lines are likely to cross? So we've got sort of enough or nearly enough, because I do understand that you'll never have enough places, because of course you have the place and then somebody else turns up who hasn't got the same needs that you have places for, so it always adds complications. But how long into the future might we see that we have roughly the same number of places that we need?
Thanks, Councillor Burton.
Kathy, is your hand up to answer that question? No.
Not particularly. Chair, if you don't mind, if I come in, what I wanted to just highlight that this additional places is not the only answer to managing EHCPs. There's also about how we support mainstream schools to accommodate for our young people who could, with some extra support, be managed within ordinary schools, and so it's how we also work in conjunction with them. And so there are other things afoot that we're doing to try and manage the number. So it isn't X amount of places will meet X amount of EHCP growth. It's also about how we support schools to assist us in some of that.
That's great. Thanks, Kathy. Well, I've got a number of speakers. I apologise if I get the order wrong. So I think Sandra first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Well, once again, so I'll put my camera on, sorry. Yeah, once again, to be transparent, I am a member of the SEND Improvement Board, and I am in complete support of this paper, both as a councillor and also as a trustee of a local MAT, who will be submitting a bid, probably has already. I'll keep quiet about that. So we obviously we know that the high needs budget doesn't meet local need, and one of the things that creating specialist bases on mainstream school sites does is it obviously helps the budget, but it also helps the young people attending the base to stay local rather than travel outside the council area as they have been doing in order to attend special schools. But the question I wanted to ask is, can I be assured that the council's current tricky financial situation will not prevent or slow down the proposed expansion of any of the proposed capital projects to deliver more specialist school places? Thank you.
I'm not sure who's best to answer that one.
How about if I have a go? Sean, sorry.
Hi. Sorry,
Hi there. So apologies for jumping in, but just if I may, apologies, I can't see if my camera's on. I seem to have a Teams problem, so apologies. I hope you can see and hear me okay. It's really just to draw the distinction between capital and revenue. I mean, Sandra's absolutely right that the increase in these places should have an impact on our high needs block deficit. Certainly where we know we're an outlier is in the number of children placed out of borough, whether that's geographically out of the area or in specialist non-maintained provision. So there is a revenue implication of these places, but we have currently got, we've received SEND funding from government, and we've also got the option to bid it, as it were, internally for some of our own capital funding, and later on in this meeting we'll certainly be looking at one of those proposals, and they'll be coming forward to Cabinet in due course in the council's normal way.
Thanks, Councillor Green. It's very reassuring. Councillor, any further questions? Yeah, thank you. Mark, sorry.
Sorry, my question's been answered. Thank you.
Yes, Mark. Sarah, you're up.
Hi, okay, to an extent this has kind of been answered, so I'm just going to start with the comment I was originally going to say, which is, first off, reading through this report, it was so well structured. Everything is like completely, just everything you want to ask is kind of laid out in. Obviously we want to elaborate on some of it, and one of the questions I have is actually, do we have an update on like how the funding's going like at the moment, and how just at this moment in time we are doing rather than just in the future?
Yeah, I'm not sure who's best to answer that one. So, will the officers answer that?
Well, can you just repeat the question? So how's the funding going? And then, sorry, I missed the last bit.
So how is it currently? So like basically, is it all on track? But rather than just how it's going to be in the future, what have we got at the moment that's working?
Do you mean in terms of provision?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can answer that, and maybe Tanya can answer about the sort of the project and how that's going at the moment. So we do have some resource bases across the local authority, and we've got some satellite provisions across the local authority. So we've got some satellite provisions that are providing special school education, but on site at some mainstream schools. So that's increased provision for us. And then we've also got a couple of resource bases. So they're for children who don't necessarily need special provision, but they need more than mainstream provision. And then, of course, we have some really good practice in our mainstream schools as well. So what we're trying to do is replicate that really good practice and then expand the specialist provision in terms of some resource bases and satellite provision as well. Did that answer your question? And then Tanya, I wonder if you can come in and answer the first part of that question about are we on track with, are we on track with tranche 1? Was that the question?
Yeah.
I think it was. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the key thing about the delivery of all of these places is what impact does it have on our revenue expenditure? And we know that something like the resource-based provision at Broadstone First and Broadstone Middle saves us about 20k per place. So we can be confident that what we're doing will save money. I think the key thing is the time scale for that and that really developing to a real tangible, noticeable shift in expenditure. And I think that time it's going to take time, because of course once children are placed in a provision, what you can't do then is whip them out and then say, right, we've created these new places here, there you go. So I think it's, well, we're in it for the long haul in terms of the impact in revenue terms. Key thing for us is to track it and to monitor it, and that form part of the work that we do as an authority, coming together to talk about, you know, what is the forecast estimate on the revenue and what's working really well. I think part of our business planning helps to try to mitigate the risk of us creating places that has little or no impact. And I know that colleagues have sort of picked up that, you know, it's about the provision of local places for local children, which will then have an offshoot to other savings like home to school transport. And again, unfortunately, that will take time to materialise in the figures. But when it starts to gain some momentum, we'll start to see, you know, not just one cohort worth of saving, we'll see 2 and 3 and 4 cohorts as children age through the system. If that makes sense.
Thanks, Tony. That's very interesting. So thank you for that. Councillor Haynes, I think, wanted to come in.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can actually all hear me.
Loud and clear.
Okay, great, thanks. So I think some of the questions I had have already been covered, which was basically relating to the increase in the number of pupils with SEN requirements. What I actually wanted to touch on was obviously some of the provisions, particularly in tranche 2 and 3. I've had the opportunity to visit the Ensbury Park campus, and that's really, really impressive. But I also visited another school, which is Portfield. I think they're just outside Christchurch, where they only do provision for pupils with autism. But what was quite interesting was they were telling me about their Futures program, which is basically setting up those that are the equivalent of sixth form, so that they're prepared for life outside, to live independently, which I think is actually absolutely brilliant, because then in the long term, it's not just a case of looking at the bottom line with cost savings as they go transition into adulthood, but it's just actually giving that person the confidence to actually go out into the real world. So that was actually really, I thought, quite inspirational. But having said that, because those are the only 2 schools I've visited, it could be that all the other schools actually do something similar. But I also do hope that this school, because I understand they have put an expression of interest in that they are actually perhaps within the tranche 2 and tranche 3 discussions. And the other thing I was going to talk about was obviously the link, which I think Tanya has actually just touched on, which was this is not just a send budget, but it also has, if we can keep local places for local people, then it will gradually have an impact on the transportation costs, because I sit on the appeals panel and I know how tight that budget is. And I think that it's quite difficult to actually juggle this, because if we have pupils or someone that has a need, then and they meet the criteria, then we have to have the provision for this person. But the other thing, and this is probably a bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment, is whether we are in a position to actually be able to see that part of the increase in numbers that we have is because people are, for whatever reason, moving into the BCP area, possibly because they think that our criteria is a little bit more easy to fulfill, or whether the criteria is the same nationwide. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Haynes. Sorry, Tanya, did you want to come back in?
Yeah, sorry, I just thought maybe I could help with Councillor Haynes' reference to Portfield. That scheme has suffered some delay because, of course, the business case didn't necessarily stack up initially. And I think that's really important because it's an independent provision with a high cost per pupil placement. And it really begged the question is, why on earth would we support capital investment when you'll provide the places anyway? Now, that's a really challenging question. We've been very open with the school and they've been very accommodating with that very open approach, you know, and having that honest discussion. Actually, very interestingly, we have met again with Portfield today, and it is a slightly different thing that they're putting together, and we are looking at it with some fresh eyes, and I think it is a very interesting proposition, particularly now that we've gone away and looked at our data and seen that there's significant benefit for offering places for children with ASC, with anxiety, and offering a curriculum where those life skills are front and centre. So I am hopeful that we'll be able to dust down that expression in a way that makes it more than acceptable, but also then offers the value for money that we seek. So just think that's helpful. On the moving in, the children moving in, there is evidence, and Angie will be able to sort of support on this. There's absolutely evidence that we've learned just in this last couple of weeks working with our data people that actually the level of movers in is quite stark. And the figure that sticks in my mind is that there's 3 forms of entry up to 90 children when you compare one census figure in 1 year with the following year's census figure. So just in the space of 1 year, 90 children have arrived in the reception and then aging through to the year 1 cohort. That's very difficult to plan for. Why they've moved, obviously a whole range of reasons. Don't know whether they see BCP as a light touch in terms of EHCP. I would like to think not, and I'd like to think that a lot of those are to do with what we're seeing in the news with overseas people moving, and but also you know, general movers in, which is something we do see a lot of.
Thanks, Tanya. That was interesting. Thanks for that. Does anybody have any comments?
Chair, sorry. Just quickly, let's just thank Tanya for those responses. And it's just actually quite staggering that in just a period of 12 months, we've recorded an increase of 90. So I'm just wondering whether as part of the this provision that we're looking at and we're monitoring, that we actually maybe look a little bit more into this as to why that might be, and perhaps if there's any benchmarking, we could compare, say, with our neighbours in Hampshire, whether they are seeing something similar, or whether for whatever reason, the reason that we probably currently are unaware of, they want to move into the BCP area. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Haynes. Oh, sorry, Angie, would you like to come in?
Yes, I'd just expand a bit on the 90 that Tanya mentioned, particularly applications for mainstream school. at such a young age, their special educational needs, if they have any, have yet to be assessed and provided for by our schools. In terms of our initial view of the data, the majority of families are moving internationally. Part of that is our Ukrainian refugee programme, with families who are sponsoring Ukrainian families. We also have other refugees who are moving into the area, including Afghani refugees and Hong Kong nationals as well. But looking over the more recent year, we're certainly seeing high numbers who are coming into the area to provide who are being given employment in our hospitals, our care services, our social care services, and also Bournemouth University has also managed to attract a high number of international students this year. So we really are seeing quite a large proportion of families from overseas moving directly to this area for work or for study. We are also seeing a whole range of other families moving in from different parts of the country. And a lot of that is to do with their experience of COVID and a change of work, change of lifestyle choices. We do continue to meet with our colleagues over in Hampshire and Dorset, and I think it's fair to say they are also experiencing high levels. When I've attended Department for Education meetings around Ukrainian refugee programme, there's lots of comments from a whole range of local authorities about the net migration some are receiving, whilst others are actually feeling that children, their families are leaving. So it's not just us that is experiencing this whirl of different families going everywhere.
That's really interesting, because we're on times of great change at the moment, aren't we? There's been one event after another, but we'll get through it. Has anyone else got any further questions before we move on? I think we've been asked just to obviously note the progress on this matter, but I think I speak on behalf of the whole committee. I think we're really pleased to see all the hard work and partnership work that's going on between the whole of BCP, to provide spaces for our young people. So thanks to the officers for all their hard work. And it's really reassuring to see everything that's going on. So yeah, thank you. So we can move up to item number 8, which is the update on the Longsbury Enderby Park campus. We looked at this item back in June 21, and I think we want to look at the difference the project is making to the young people, and to look at perhaps further details on why that project was overspent. I know that's been looked at other committees, but I believe we've got a report to review now regarding that, which Tanya's going to deliver. So sorry, Tanya, you're up again. So hello.
Thanks very much. Yeah, you'll be pleased to know that I won't train in the same fine detail as I did the previous report. I do understand that committee members come well prepared and having read the report. I suppose the key thing in the report that we've got before us now is really majoring on the impact that this provision has created on the opportunities for learning, and we've sort of set that out in the report under a whole range of things, including reference to curriculum and the life skills that they're teaching, but also the opportunity to create after school and extracurricular clubs, and some real sense of that the new provision is really developing and looking forward to embracing change as it becomes really well established, really well received from the parents, which is the big thing, and the partnership that they've got there with staff to plan that transition to secondary school is really well embedded practice now. Some reference in the report to staffing and teaching in terms of the expertise, and that expertise is really important when you're considering the need to really develop the students' emotional well-being, to enable them to create the right conditions for them to succeed day to day, which I think has been really successful, and I know that the Academy Trust would certainly highlight that as being critical to the success. Numbers on roll are presented in the report, and some level of cost avoidance, and then details of lessons learned, which, as you say, we've rehearsed those lessons learned. They are part of an audit report as well, or they're woven into an audit report, and we're making really strong progress on that. So I think this provision is whilst it did experience a difficult start and a difficult journey in terms of delivering it from a capital point of view, actually what we've ended up with is something which really gives awesome value for money and is a really good quality local provision that we can be proud of and that parents can feel confident about sending their children, young people. That's all I was going to highlight. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the report, Tanya. I think, as it's been discussed in other committees regarding the overspend, but the positive side of that, there's been some, sorry, something flying in my hand there. There's been there's been an increase in spaces, and it's so great to see we've got the music room, which is close to my heart, probably Lisa's heart as well. Being a musician, sensory room, indoor sports hall, a mugger area as well. So there's been some huge improvements with that. So thanks very much. So I think we've got Councillor Burton, and then Sarah wants to come in. Councillor Burton.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I'll just sort of follow on. I think we're seeing evidence that things have been learnt from this situation in reports that we're seeing coming through on other building projects, which I'm pleased to see. So things which should come to our committee has actually made a difference. I'm also really pleased to see that you're talking about the good value. I know May did say earlier on she visited the school. I visited the school twice, and it's very clear to see that the difference it's making to the pupils there, and at still a good value price. It's just that we were worried that the cost implications did dominate the news on this. So I mean, it's not really a question, it's just sort of an observation.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Burton. I'm sorry, would you like to come in?
Yeah, so obviously this is excellent, and you've mentioned feedback from parents, but I was wondering, has there been any feedback from the children?
So
Yeah, of course.
I wanted to share with you a really positive story about a young man who attends there, who is now attending school full time for the first time in 3 years. He's getting careers advice and is engaging in his education, and for the first time is thinking about his future rather than being excluded. So this young man had, I think it was 23 exclusions, didn't actually realise he'd had that many. So that there's a real positive impact that this provision is having on our young people. And that's just one story. They are now at capacity, so there are plenty more young people with similar stories.
Thanks, Sarah. That's really interesting. Thanks. Great to have that feedback. So is that okay, Sarah?
Oh yeah, that was perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Councillor Moore.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, obviously, I followed the development of the Logs Bay Ensbury Park campus since it was first proposed, and we did actually visit it early this year, and I have to say I was highly impressed. I think the campus is actually a really good example of what a good specialist campus looks like. And I thought I was well impressed, I have to say. The financial management of these projects is always very tricky, and it always has been. And there's always lessons to learn. And I am pleased that you've looked into it. But I do think that the work inside this campus is very good, and it was well worth it. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Moore. Would anyone else like to speak to this agenda item? Okay, thanks. Yeah, Councillor Green, did you indicate?
Thank you, Sean. I just feel I ought to say something. This having sat in front of a joint meeting of this panel and the Overview and Scrutiny Board in July 2021, looking at this, and I hope I have to say I'm delighted at Richard's comment that the papers which have come forward to this board have shown a far greater grip and governance than that which was originally applied. I think we all know that the Ensbury Park campus was always a good idea, but the evidence for why it was a good idea wasn't presented at the beginning, and that led to a number of changes which needed to be applied. But at that meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Board, along with Terry Reynolds, I gave the assurance that we were working incredibly hard on our governance. I'm really, I think the opportunity that's been given this evening by Tanya explaining what we're doing with the SEND expansion, and later on, of course, you will have the opportunity to look at the Broadstone Middle School, show that that's been taken very seriously. Always happy to come back to you and answer further questions, but I hope you see the immense difference that we've made in the past 15 months. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kat. So agree. Okay, would anyone else like to come in? Okay, so I think we'll finish off that agenda point there. I think for us to summarize, I think we're all reassured to see the lessons learned regarding the project management side of that. When these things, as Councillor Moore said, are always very difficult to foresee. Especially what's been going on at the moment around the world. But also, it's so pleasing to see the positive impact it's having on our young people again, which is just great to see. So thanks to everyone that's involved in that. Okay, so we can move now to agenda item number. I'm better about my glasses actually. Agenda number 9, which is review of the RE syllabus, which is the Statutory Advisory Council for Religious Education. Sarah Remples asked us to add this to our forward plan, which we did back in March this year, which we need to look at this policy every 5 years. So Georgie Pinder, the Education Advisor and the named officer relating to these matters, is to present the report. So Georgie, over to you.
Hello, good evening, thank you. This report is for information because we have the SACRA, the Standing Advisory Council. The councillors that are in the room this evening are part of that Standing Advisory Council as well. So the agreed syllabus is a syllabus that comes around every 5 years. This will be our first BCP syllabus. So we previously had a Bournemouth and Poole joint syllabus, but this will be our first BCP syllabus. And that syllabus has been commissioned via SACRA, BCP SACRA, and is currently under development by our commissioned partner, which is the Jan Lever Education Group, in consultation with all of our schools locally, and with all of the religious and worldviews groups that sit on SACRA, including our diocese partners as well. So that piece of work is currently ongoing, and we're meeting with the schools at the moment to develop that syllabus and the resources. So as I say, so this report is more, I suppose, for information, but there are some recommendations for you. So recommendations of the report are that BCP agreed syllabus will reflect our local communities and very much support high quality religious education across our local system. There is an option as we go via, once this syllabus is finished, that we could actually use that syllabus. There's been interest from other local authorities to potentially purchase that syllabus off us and adapt it for their needs as well. So that would be something that would come back to SACRA and to Overview and Scrutiny. But I'm happy to take any questions. I know I've kind of rushed through that slightly, but as I say, it's kind of gone through our SACRA, and so it's just whether there's any questions from Overview and Scrutiny.
Oh, so just one for me. With the academies obviously have the choice whether to take this policy up because they might have their own policy.
Yeah, absolutely. So they don't have to. So it's our maintained schools that will need to teach our agreed syllabus, but lots of our standalone academies also choose to teach the locally agreed syllabus. And actually a lot of our academies are working with us on this syllabus as well. So we've already got buy-in from almost all, in fact, of our academies, and really keen to be involved and really keen to be delivering the locally agreed syllabus. What we find is most of the time our academies dip in and out of the syllabus rather than follow it in their entirety. But one of the things that came back when we were doing a piece of commissioning work was really around what schools wanted, how we could help them, really embedding this within our school improvement work as well. And so part of the commissioned work is to make sure there is a bank of resources available to our schools. And in particular, the focus is around SEND and RE in our schools, and we're working really closely with Linwood as a teaching school, previous teaching school, and Winchelsea, and we have some excellent teaching staff that are supporting with that delivery as well.
Okay, thanks. When you say buy-in for the academies, is that actually, do you have to purchase it off BCP to use it, or do we just sort of pass that over?
No, so that's not been the case in the past. I was talking more emotional and curriculum buy-in rather than a purchasing buy-in.
Okay, thanks. That's what I thought. So thanks for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Has any other committees got any comments or to make on this?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I wholeheartedly support this, and it's I think under review has been a bit lax lately, and I think it's been let to go. So I mean, I welcome this 5-year review and look forward to it, and hopefully all our schools will be rolling it out and plugging in, as I say, to the RE curriculum, which is most important. And I think more and more schools are finding this. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks.
It's not a question, but I just wanted to say that I've already met with David Rees and asked him to keep me included in the future plans in the RE curriculum if possible, because it links really closely to my campaign, and I just want to say that I'm really excited to be involved in the development of this new syllabus.
Thank you. That's really helpful feedback. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for your involvement. Does anyone else like to any comments, questions? Okay, Lisa.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to make the comment that actually about 95% of our schools are academies, aren't they? So it sounds like a really good idea to do this, to have this, but if only about 5% of the schools are sort of automatically going to be signed up to it, how many of the academies do take it up? Are there many of them that actually don't have anything to do with it at all?
No. So our experience of our conferences is that our academy system, our standalones, have all had the opportunity and do actually engage in the process, and actually the feedback very much has been that they really welcome a locally agreed syllabus, and as I say, this is our first BCP syllabus, and so in the past we've got some schools that are using the Dorset syllabus, so some of our Christchurch schools are still using Dorset syllabus because it would have been kind of very tricky for them to move to a BCP syllabus kind of 2 years in and then move again for their curriculum planning. But our Poole and Bournemouth schools use at least some of the BCP or the BMP syllabus as was, and as I say, we've got schools outside of BCP, so sat on the Dorset border, that have also come to our conferences and are very keen to use the BCP syllabus.
Thank you. Could I just say, so I mean, what sort of percentage would you say of the schools are taking it up?
I can go back and get the actual figure for you.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, I can do that. But a significant amount, I can get the figure that attended our conferences and that have engaged in the commissioning process. I can go back and get that for you. It's not a problem.
Thanks, Lisa. So, Mark.
Hello. As diocese representative, I'd just like to reassure you that when church schools in the BCP area have a SIAMS inspection, their church school inspection, they'll be wanting to know why they are if they are following the locally agreed syllabus, and be reassured if they are. So it's in the church school's interest to be engaged with it, whether they're a standalone or in a multi-academy trust. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Okay, would anyone else like to speak to this agenda item? I can't see anyone else. Okay, so I think we're just asked to note this before it goes to full council for full council approval. Is everyone happy with that before we move on? Thank you. Okay, so on to agenda item number 10, which is the school admission arrangements for, seems ages away, 2024-25, which is termination at 65 to 86. Again, this is added by Sarah Rempel to enable the committee to consider any proposals before they go to Cabinet. So if I can just ask Sarah to present the report before we take questions. Over to you, Sarah. Thank you.
It's actually Angie who's going to present.
Sorry, Angie. Hello. Hello again.
Hello again. I realise that 24-25 does feel like quite a way away, but currently we have parents applying for September 23, ready for the 23-24 application, ready for the 23-24 admission year. So I'm here, I come here at least once a year to talk about our admission arrangements for our maintained schools. We have 5 maintained schools that the admissions policy within the report is referring to, and those 5 schools are all primary schools in the Christchurch area. I'm asking that a recommendation be to determine the admission arrangements this year, because there are no changes to the admissions policy from the 2023-24 policy that yourselves and Cabinet determined after a public consultation this time last year, roughly. So if you have any questions regarding the policy or admissions, I'm more than happy to take them.
I don't have any questions. It looked quite the same. It's always handy to read through, you remember all the different regulations, which is always helpful when advising a resident. So thanks for that. I can't see any of those.
Sorry, Chair. Did she say that was just for the Christchurch area?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the 5 maintained schools. Yeah.
Yes, so the 5 maintained schools that this policy is for are Burton Primary School, Christchurch Infant School, Muddyford Infant and Junior School, and Somerford Primary School. All the other schools in the BCP area are either voluntary aided, foundation or academy schools that manage their own admissions policy. And as a team, we work closely with them in supporting their consultation and development of any changes they wish to make on their policies.
So okay, Eddie. So thanks, Angie, for that. Okay, so I can't see anyone else indicating. So I'll see. Oh, sorry. Thanks, Sandra. So Richard, sorry, let's come in. Sorry, Richard, I didn't see that.
Just adding to what's been said, we did have a discussion in this committee last year, I think it was, when one of the schools in Christchurch changed its admission numbers, and everything else was the same. So I've looked through the report and I have no disagreement with what's said there at all.
Thanks, Richard. So I think we're all happy to accept that as as recommended before it goes off to Cabinet. So everyone happy with that? So thanks, folks. Okay, so we'll move on to item 11, which is the key performance indicators Q1. This enables the committee to monitor this issue and target scrutiny as required. So we've got Rena Mystery, Head of Performance, to present the report. So hello, Rena.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So the purpose of them is to provide the committee with an update on of the April to June 21-23 Children's Services Key Performance Indicators as reported in the Corporate Performance Scorecard. So I'm assuming that you've read this summary report, so I'll just provide a high-level overview of the key points. Now, the key performance indicators are reported under 3 categories. So the first is permanency and corporate parenting, second is front door and early help, and the third is education. So if we focus on permanency and corporate parenting, so if we look at 3.2 on the summary report, so the children in care, for the indicators, the percentage of children with a permanence plan by the second LAC review and percentage of children in care with a plan for permanence, the services are continuing to focus on achieving timely and early permanence planning, and this is evident in the performance as we continue to remain significantly above our target levels. So our target levels are 95% and 90%, and we continue to remain above them. Now, so indicators that we are keeping an eye on at the moment, so that's indicator 3.3 on the summary report. So that's a percentage of children in care with attendance at a good or outstanding school above 95%. Now, the Q1 figure for BCP was 90%. Now, we do have a number of children that are attending, so a number of children in care, sorry, that are attending schools with no Ofsted rating. So we have about 3 children attending schools in Scotland, for example. We also have a number of children attending schools that are currently converting into academies, so there will be no Ofsted rating available. And we also have a number of children attending schools that have an Ofsted rating of requires improvement. And these children have remained in these schools with this Ofsted rating of requires improvement to stop further upheaval in their life. However, what we are doing is we are continuing to closely monitor these children that are attending these schools that have a requires improvement Ofsted rating or no Ofsted rating. So we're monitoring their improvement journey and the progress that they're making. Now, moving on to the percentage of children in care who are NEET, this has increased in Q1 compared to Q4. So in Q4 21-22, the figure stood at 12.6%, and in Q1 22-23, the figure stood at 14.2%. Sorry. Now, a contributing factor is linked to the increase in unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, so our US cohort. So actions that we're undertaking with regards to this indicator are, it's planned that a course will be introduced in Q2 this year. So focusing on US cohort that are not engaging in educational provision. So there has been the recruitment of a US worker to ensure that the offer is widely available across BCP. Now, moving on to indicators under front door and early help. So 4.1, timeliness of assessments. Now, this has improved by 9% in Q1 compared to Q4 last year. So it currently stands at 70% compared to 61 previously. Now, improvements are a result of increased workforce stability and the maintaining reduced caseloads. So moving on to percentage of repeat referrals, in 12 months. Now, although we saw a slight dip in Q1, BCP remains above national and statistical neighbour comparators. So a dip sampling exercise was undertaken to gain an understanding around the reasons for the repeat or the re-referrals. And learning from this exercise includes improving interventions at point of referral and amongst adolescents having a greater emphasis on antisocial behaviour, exploitation and parental boundaries. So now moving on to the education indicators. So if we look at 5.1, so your children missing out on education. So these are children of compulsory school age who are not on a school roll, not being educated otherwise, and who have been out of any educational provision for a substantial period of time. So what we have seen is we've seen a 39% increase in the number of CMOEs, so children missing out on education. So in Q1, our figure stood at 263. Now, social and behavioural difficulties and mental health needs are some of the primary reasons for this increase. So we're now starting to see the impact that COVID is having on our children. So actions that are being undertaken by our services is that a designated PMOE, so a pupil missing out on education officer, has been appointed to monitor the length of time children are placed on part-time tables, and work is to take place with educational psychologist service to develop an offer of support to get children back into school. So moving on to exclusions, what we have seen is exclusions amongst the primary age school children. There generally hasn't been much movement or much change between Q4 of last year and Q1 of this year. However, the story isn't the same for the secondary age school cohort. So we have seen an increase in exclusions amongst our secondary aged pupils, and contributing factors to this increase are, schools reporting that they're unable to meet the increasingly complex needs of some of these pupils. So we are working with schools to develop a pilot programme to proactively support pupils who are at risk of exclusion or experiencing poor attendance. And we're also piloting a multi-pre-exclusion case conferencing system. And finally, the percentage of 16 to 17-year-old NEETs, the BCP figure was significantly below national and our Southwest averages, which is absolutely fantastic. And this is reflective of the dedication and the team's drive to ensure and efforts to track young people and support them back into some form of education, employment and training. So that's the end of the summary. Have you any questions?
Thanks, Rena, for that. That's very, yeah. So Lisa, would you like to come in first?
Thank you. I was just interested in what you mentioned about the you ask young people, and and you said that another course would be put on by BCHA, I think. And one of the things I've noticed with those young people is that they find college quite, they don't seem to make a lot of progress because they're only with other young people who don't speak English. So their English doesn't improve and they don't really progress in the way that they hoped with college. And I wondered if this would just be more of the same, if they're just grouped together, whereas I've met some before that have gone to ordinary school and they've quite quickly, their English has come along much, much greater speed, and they've met a wider variety of friends. So I just wondered if grouping them all together again is just perpetuating that situation where they sort of can't really get on, because also there's the issue that until you've got your maths and English, you can't get onto any other course which is interesting, and that can go on for 3 or 4 years. So I can actually understand why they would drop out, because it's not very satisfying to go through education that doesn't really satisfy you. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Sorry, okay, Councillor Burton, would you like to come in?
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. I'm just coming to the the statement about the number, the contributing factors increase as stated by the number of school head teachers is due to the school being inadequately resourced to meet the increasingly complex need of some pupils. I'd imagine that is a direct quote from head teachers. I was just wondering, has that been tested? Is that actually really the reason, or are there any other reasons? And I have a sort of question to follow on from that afterwards, if you see what I mean.
Okay, thank you. Sarah, are you able to step in and provide a response?
Yeah, I think head teachers would have a number of reasons. Some heads would say that they can't meet needs, and as we know, funding is an issue for most schools. I think it's like we're experiencing the number of children now with additional needs and the rise in EHCPs. Just to come to Rena's, when Rena said about the pre-exclusion board, we're about to have our first, we're calling it Education Entitlement Board on the 6th of October. So the idea is that we will have that overview of children who are missing education and those exclusions. And we're having head teachers on that board as well. So we'll be able to hear directly from head teachers.
Thank you, Sarah. And following on from that, it was slightly different because you've talked about the cost implications, what, 20 to 50,000 pounds per year, and that is just providing education for these excluded pupils. Has any work been done to have a look at what the total cost is for having children excluded, i.e. I was thinking of the input we had from the youth offending team and the likelihood for permanently excluded pupils turning up in their books and them having to spend money on them and other facilities. And is there any way of looking at using some of that money that might not be spent if we keep them in school to keep them in school?
Yeah, so we are reviewing our use of alternative provision across the local area. So we will be pulling together some figures for that. I don't have them off the top of my head, but we have a duty to provide alternative provision for a child who is permanently excluded if they don't return to a mainstream school. What was the last part of your question, sorry?
I was just wondering whether any of the we could use any resources from any of the other organisations who end up having to spend money on permanently excluded pupils to stop them from being permanently excluded in the first place.
So funding for those children who are permanently excluded in terms of alternative provision. When you say other organisations, who do you mean?
Well, I mean, the example I used was the youth offending team, but there are other organisations who seem to spend quite a lot of their income on issues because of pupils being permanently excluded, because these permanently excluded pupils have a lot of time on their own and getting involved in other things, whether it be mental health problems, whether it be drug-related problems, whether it be offending problems, and all these other organisations are therefore end up spending more money because pupils have been excluded from school permanently. Is there any way of getting them involved as a way of keeping more of these pupils, adding the support to the schools to stop the exclusion happening in the first place?
Yeah, so what the Education Entitlement Board wants to do is to bring together all those stakeholders and to look at what other support could be put in place. So yeah, your idea, what you're talking about is our graduated response, is investing more in that graduated response. So the Education Entitlement Board would draw those stakeholders together.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Okay, thanks, both. Any requests? Sorry, you're next.
I'd imagine a lot of you know about my campaign and how closely these subjects pertain to it. I know Sarah Rumpel does, and a lot of surveying has been done into similar topics, and kind of similar to Lisa's comment. When we group together people with disorders, whether it is learning difficulties or behavioural difficulties, it's been noticed, especially in these surveys I've done, that it can sometimes often impact people because they not only are not in mainstream schools, so they can't adapt to, social norms, but also if it is a behavioural difficulty, often we will notice violent patterns. And as most of you would know, when you group violent children with violent children, it doesn't go well. And what we notice in, especially in surveying, is it often makes children uncomfortable and not want to go to school. So obviously I have had close contact with these children, and I've spoken to, I'd say, at least 3 children who one of the main reasons they don't go to school is because of fear of being harmed or because they feel like they can't properly learn. how are we planning on kind of overtaking this problem, especially like when we are grouping together these children who have been excluded so they cannot get back into mainstream school?
Thanks, Zara. I don't know who you've spoken to, but obviously we want children to attend school and to feel safe. And certainly that is a school's first duty. Before you teach them anything, it's making sure that we keep them safe. But there are a number of provisions across BCP that work really well with children with social, emotional and mental health difficulties. And I think they would say that they provide, we've got outstanding provisions in BCP that provide for children with social, emotional, mental health difficulties, and they would say that they provide an outstanding level of education for them. Children have, like you say, children have different needs. There are some children who need a very quiet learning environment, some children who need to look at sort of more vocational learning environment. And so across BCP, we're hoping to cater for all of those needs.
Thanks, Sarah. Is that okay, Sarah?
Oh, yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Has anyone else got any comments, questions, or please? Okay.
Thanks, Chair. Well, I was going to partially ask what Richard was referring to, and I think what Zara mentioned is extremely useful. And I just looking at the figures, because 263 children missing out on education is extremely worrying, concerning. It says 57% of these children are accessing an agreed part-time timetable. So that leaves the other 43. And I wondered, are they actually sort of being monitored closely, and how much of this is due to possibly the narrowness of the school curriculum? I know that the creative arts subjects have been largely dropped in many secondary schools, and there's nothing really sort of for the soul or creativity. And I wondered how much, if a child isn't really sort of science and maths based, what is there to encourage them to attend school?
Thank you. I think it's very difficult to make a judgment on why these children aren't attending school and whether it's down to particular subjects. I think children who aren't attending school, there may well be complex reasons for it. I would say that the schools in BCP would say that they offer a broad and balanced curriculum, and certainly they would be trying to engage some of our most vulnerable children. So they would be ensuring that their curriculum does meet the needs of these children. But I would say it'd be very difficult to pinpoint the reasons of why these children are missing out on education and whether it was down to particular subjects.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Sarah. Anyone else got any questions? I think just one general one for me. How do the academies report back to BCP regarding the statistics about all the, how they're interacting with our young people? Is it via email, or is there a separate reporting matrix for that?
Sorry, you broke up there slightly, Chair. Could you just repeat your question? Sorry, I've got internet connection problems. Apologies.
Oh, sorry, it's most likely me. It's just how do the academies report back on their statistics that we collate? Is that via an email system, or is there an internal matrix that they complete? Does it have to be done weekly or monthly? Or?
There are a number of avenues. So mainly through automatic importing. So we have daily, weekly feeds, and then there are other ways through. So, for example, for post-16 data, we have an activity cycle. So we request the information for the pupils via, a secure spreadsheet manner, basically.
Okay, thanks. I was just interested to see how you do this. Thanks very much for that. Okay, I can't see anyone else indicating, so I think we'll move on to. Thanks very much, folks. That's really interesting. So that's just for the committee to note. So thank you, folks. So I think the next agenda point is item 12. We've got the portfolio holder update. So I believe we both, Nicola and Mike, would like to speak. So Nicola, would you like to go first if you're there?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Sorry, apologies, just looking for some of my portfolio stuff has come before you tonight. There's never a dull moment in terms of pupil place planning, whether that's for mainstream pupils or SEND. So that's going on apace, as is working up the business. The business plans for some of them. I just wanted to give you a bit of a couple of comments about the SEND improvement plan more generally. The work, I know it's something you're monitoring very closely, and just to let you know that the sector-led improvement partner from Bedfordshire has been in very close touch with the SEND team, and that work is going on apace. Bedfordshire have been through a fairly similar improvement journey to that which we're experiencing, and they've done it quite recently. They're full of energy and really, really supportive of the team, and that's sitting alongside that work, and again touching on the pressure in the high needs block. You'll be aware that we're involved in the delivering better value to the Department for Education in terms of that high needs block overspend, and again, there's a lot of work going on currently, looking into the very granular detail, and actually it speaks to some of the questions that were asked earlier in the meeting about what we know about our children with SEND and making sure that we're doing the best that we can and the most bespoke stuff for them. But pretty much everything else is covered elsewhere in the agenda.
Thanks, Councillor Green. I don't see anyone to have a question. So Mike, would you like to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. A couple of quick comments from me. I mean, firstly, just so you know, we have 2 simultaneous Ofsted inspections coming up in October. We've got an inspection of children in need child protection plans. We've also got an inspection of the Youth Justice Service, which is a service we share with Dorset County. And I'm told that inspection actually involves 8 on-site inspectors. And I just want to make the comment, this is going to put enormous pressure on a service which is already very heavily occupied with improvement activity across the board. So if you do notice a slightly longer response to routine inquiries over the next 4 or 5 weeks, please bear with us. Obviously, if something's urgent or important, we would try to deal with it in our normal way. Also, there are 2 dates for your diaries. You heard a lot earlier about the new Care Leavers Hub 333. There is an open day planned on October the 24th, and I expect to see an invite coming out to all members. I think it's from about 12 o'clock onwards. The second date for your diaries is an all-member seminar on October the 11th from 5 to 7. There we have our young people, including our MYPs, talking about their priorities, and also they're very keen to have an open discussion with members about how engagement with members generally can be improved. So I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at both those events. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Some important dates there. Okay, so anyone got questions for Mike? No, so I don't see anyone indicating. So thanks very much, folks. And just to say, thanks to the portfolio holders and the team for everyone's hard work, and obviously best of luck for the Ofsted inspections that are coming on. But for my short time on this committee, I can see, all the improvements that are coming through, on a weekly and monthly basis. So again, on behalf of the committee, thanks for everyone's hard work. We'll move on now to the next agenda point, which is the forward plan. I haven't received any comments on the forward plan, but I don't know if I could just ask Richard if he's received any comments regarding that. You're there, Richard?
No comments, Chair. Just one thing from it's not on the forward plan, but it's from the action points earlier on, which is sort of related. If I can just get back to it. The child exploitation, we had a discussion about this at a previous meeting, and we have got a group of 5 of us now who want to get involved in a working group. This working group, getting the date has been the issue, to get all 5 of us there, but some of the pressure has been taken off because Kathy Thomas, the interim service manager of the complex safeguarding and age of care children's social care, was going to be leaving BCP quite soon, but she's now been with us for a little bit longer. So for those 5 people who I've got their names down, it will be happening, and we've got a little bit more slack to organise it so we can all attend.
Okay. Thanks, Richard, for that. Sorry, did you want to come in?
So on behalf of all 4 MYPs, we were wondering if we could do an annual report in March 2023.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I can speak on behalf of the chair. I can't see an issue with that. Are you okay with that, Chair?
Yes, we've done an annual report previously, so I see no issue at all with that. In fact, we normally enjoy it quite a lot.
But I think I speak on behalf of all MYPs when I say that's wonderful.
I look forward to that. Thanks very much. Okay, so there's no comments on the forward plan. We just moved to meeting dates. So yes, we've got the 22nd of November and the 2nd of February.
But it's 2023.
I see. Well, I was just looking at that. We're going back in time there. Okay, so everyone happy with that and noted? Okay, so we go into agenda item 15. So I've got a short notice to read out because this item will be to the exclusion of the press and public. In relation to the items of business appearing below, the committee is asked to consider the following resolution: that under the section 100A4 of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 1 and 2 in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, and that the public interest in withholding information outweighs such interest in disclosing information. So I think the live feed will have to stop now and I have to ask other committee members that aren't members or governors to leave. So sorry about that, or officers.